What's going to be How's It Hanging? How's It Happen? You guys know this is Kevin from the Chord Progression Podcast. The podcast Rolling Stone magazine says initiates profound discussions with rock and metal artists, line fans, discover the creative workflow of their favorite musicians, and understand the factors that make the band succeed or fall from fame. We are also sponsored by Dark Fusion Systems, the best for your custom computer needs. Get $100 off your entire bill with code CPPod at darkfusionsystems.com. Link strip of the podcast below. Let's go to our feature presentation. Thanks to Manic Kat Records. We have a band that Peter, the founder of Manic Kat Records, suggested for us to check out on the podcast. We have the guys in the band The Lucky here. They came out with a new EP called Wait Out on November 1st. But let's go back to what Rolling Stone had to say about the podcast. Profound discussions and understand the factors that make the band succeed or fall from fame. That's what we go into today. Not only talking about the band's music, but we talk about what it was like in their former project. And we have an incredibly great discussion about what they noticed about the creativity of music, how at previous time they were just following what was popular, trend hopping, and what the algorithm wanted, and now why their music that doesn't follow that, just follows their own creative workflow, is not only so much more fulfilling, but also so much more exciting and better. You guys ready for this one? Let's go! Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of the Chord Progression Podcast. You may have heard from this band when we had Peter from Manic Kat Records stop by the podcast. We asked him to name 3 bands or artists that he really likes, that he would love to see more people get into right now, and this was one of those names. So a couple months later, he's like, hey, Kevin, I got time with them. You want to interview him? And I'm not going to say no to Peter. He's a great guy, so here we are today. This band has a brand new EP called Wait It Out, which came out on November 1st, 2024. They have this more alternative alt-pop punk kind of style that you really could get into. And we're ready to talk all about it with these guys and get you to know them. So please welcome Tucker, Mason, and Josh from the band The Lucky to the Chord Progression Podcast. So gentlemen, welcome to the Chord Progression Podcast.
Hey,
It's good to see you guys. How are you doing out in this day and age as we, have the EP about what, a month since we recorded this? So how's everything going in life right now?
pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good.
We're chilling here. We're out in Los Angeles, avoiding all the cold weather, which is a huge pro.
Yeah. And then we're just already working on the next stuff, which I think is the life of a band, life of a musician. One thing's out, move on to the next.
Yeah.
Or even one thing is trying to come out, you're already working on the next thing, or even in the process of recording the next thing. I've heard too many bands bring that up. It's, hey, what are you doing right now? The album's ready to come out. Oh, we're already recording the next one. We're already working on the next one.
Yep.
Huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I feel like we've been working on so this EP we've been sitting on for 2 years almost, while we've been recording the next EP and the next
thing too
as well.
Just nonstop, but that's kind of, again, the way that it is in the world today, especially in the music industry, how dominant streaming is and how the algorithms are working. It's something that, might rush creativity and change up the release cycles of how things used to be, but that's a game you got to play at this point in time. Plus, if inspiration's going to strike you at any moment, you're not going to wait and be like, oh, we're not in a writing process. We can't really write this right now. No, if you're feeling something, you just got to go with it, and that's where the greatness comes from.
Exactly, yeah.
Absolutely.
I feel like the dream's always been mid-tour. You're out on the road and just in the, van with a computer pumping out more songs for the next thing,
If one of you guys is driving and all of a sudden the other two are in the back just working on stuff, it's like, well, would you do in this? I don't know. I'm watching the fucking road. Ah!
Yeah.
As long as you're not driving up here in winter while you're doing that, because then, you're working on something, all of a sudden you guys hit a patch of ice, you start sliding, doing circles, and then the whole entire recording turns into something completely different. Now you got an EDM song on your hands instead.
There you go. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. That's how it was made.
It's and that's how the Lucky turned around their style and went in a completely different direction for this record. They decided to start working in the back of a van and then hit every little pitch of bad weather you could possibly do, and then bing, bang, boom, you got a brand new album, the brand new sound.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
Something to really take thought into. But one thing I do want to know about the band is, of course, one thing I like to do is always try and find out about the history of the band, where I could come see and just find out anything I can. And when I was looking for everything I could find on the Lucky, I could not find as much as I normally would do. And I want to get people into you guys and get them to know your story. So how did the Lucky come to be, and how did you guys come together to make this whole entire band what it is today?
So the Lucky is relatively new, but we've been, making music together for 8 years now.
Yeah.
We had another band before this one called Handmade House, And that one we had until like 2021.
I think it was 2021 that we kind of like dissolved that and moved it into the Lucky.
A little fresh start.
But we started as a band in college. We all met in college on the same housing floor. Josh and I met when we were 13, and then Mason lived down the hall from us when we went to college, and he came and said hi, and then like a month later we were talking about living together.
Yeah.
And so we were writing together, wrote songs, thought we could do it for a living, and just the rest is kind of history.
Yeah. Moved out to LA all together mid-pandemic. And then decided to start this new project after we got out here. I think we just needed start fresh now that we've, had a handful of years to know what the hell we're doing and what we want to do. Mm-hmm. We got that all out of the way with the last band, and now we're moving forward with that.
Definitely feels like a clear vision for sure.
Yeah.
But you have to go through those times. You have to go through those processes in order to find out exactly what you want if you really want to do this. Nothing takes that time of just understanding where you want to go with this without having to go through some of those things where you're meeting in college, of course, meeting on the dorm room floor, which is absolutely awesome. Just being able, hey, I'm introducing myself. Now we're writing music and we're going to be living together within the span of a month. How cool is that? There's a lot of people I know in college, especially even happened with myself too, where it was, you just become friends with random people on your dorm room floor because that's always who's around you. And you never know what kind of personalities you're going to run into. You never know what kind of interests and people you're going to run into. And those can just take and form some of the lifelong friendships that you never know you were ever going to need or existed. Something like what happened with you guys, just being able to create something out of, hey, we've known each other for a while, but then here comes Mason, meet him on a dorm room floor. Let's just start writing music. Let's just see what happens. And you start a project that doesn't really come to fruition, but then you're able to take that knowledge, take that experience, form it into what is the Lucky today, and go forward with a clear vision of, hey, this is what we want to do. This is the sound we want to work with. And some of those pitfalls that might happen from when you're trying out your first ever band or your first ever project, you can circumvent those because you've already gone through them and you know what's going to happen if you get to that point. If you take this certain route, now things might not go so well. And going through a whole pandemic with that too and getting that experience in there, that probably helped out a lot too when it comes to perseverance and resolve that the band has within itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I feel like right when the pandemic hit was kind of with our last band where we were just we just were starting that upward incline. We had we had this 1 week where 3 shows back to back in Boston. We had Governor's Ball lined up. We had
we were trying to plan a tour around Governor's Ball.
We were planning a tour around Governor's Ball. We had a paid corporate gig, our first one, which is going to give us some good cash, and then we were like, all right, here we go. And then what was it, we did 2 shows of the 3 in a row, and the second
was early March 2020.
And so the first show we were like, we're playing a show,
awesome.
The second show we were like I saw some people coughing and we were like, well, hold on.
So the second show we played was the day that school was everyone's going home. And it was we played that show, and then we were supposed to play a show 2 days later, and we canceled it because everyone was like,
the third show,
really
we were
serious.
we can't do this.
Yeah, it felt dangerous because that was when COVID was happening and no one knew what was going on. So it was is this really, really dangerous? I mean, school's being sent home, so I feel like we probably shouldn't play the show.
Yeah.
And and then honestly after that, it was definitely like you were saying, there's some resilience involved in that. I don't think that we're alone in that. I think every musician, especially that's collaborative, so a lot of bands probably struggled through the pandemic. I think that's why you saw the rise of the TikTok artist.
Yeah, we definitely saw a lot of bands we know kind of fall apart because in the middle of it, everyone was remote and they all moved to different places, and it's just, I don't think it's easy to sustain a project this
collaborative.
Where you kind of need to be together in each other's heads, and it's hard to do that when you're living hours and hours away by flight, just sending each other mixes on
well, I think it's different because with our band everything is collaborative. The sound is the 3 of us, whereas I think there are bands where one person is writing the music and some people are just live musicians, but that's just never been what we've been.
But thinking about the pandemic too, I've talked to plenty of artists because I've been doing this podcast since 2019. So I've been talking to artists during it, talking to artists right after it, and always taking a look, especially seeing history. It's where did you come from? How did you get here? And there was plenty of artists where they were getting that like pickup trajectory moment right before that hit, or as time has gone on, they were even picking up their trajectory moment and getting those bigger shows, getting more consistent shows. And then something happens to the band within that point in time, whether someone leaves, something happens, anything could really happen to derail that moment. So there's a lot of bands that went through that. And when it came to the pandemic in 2020, how many bands were starting to get that positive momentum going, like you guys, get on the rise, and then bing, bang, boom, everything is shut down. I do remember what you were saying too about that like second show that you were at where after being like, yeah, we're playing well, it's like, oh, they're letting all the kids out of school and tell them they have to stay home and we're playing a show in front of people. Is this that serious? Because there are plenty of shows around here like that weekend. It was like the second weekend in March of 2020 where everyone was canceling. Some of my friends have been on the podcast like 5 or 6 times. They were playing a show about an hour and a half south of me. And it was like, well, do we go? Do you stay home? Who knows? And I'm like, I'm still going. Screw it, because I don't know when the next show is going to be. And my next show wasn't until like May of 2021. So I was like,
seriously,
it was definitely worth the risk in my mind. But it was a completely weird time. And what you were saying too, Mason, around the idea of bands not really surviving that time, especially that far, like that long of a time period for being far apart. Yeah. Family dynamics taken to play, other responsibilities taken to play. So other people are moving to other places, and just that time frame, the amount of change that was going through there. So many great projects, so many great artists, so many great bands end up going their separate ways just based on the fact of how the world was going and where their lives were going because of it. I'm glad you guys were able to stick together though, even with that file sharing, like we're sending you mixes here and there, but being able to be still close enough together where you can still see each other during that time had to have helped immensely to not only keep this thing going, but then when you decided to go and form the Lucky, really driving forward and continuing that creative process in a way that a lot of other bands, not only the ones that are at your level, but are even bigger than you guys, may have had to take a lot longer to get back into because of that gap.
And also, yeah, we've definitely lived pretty close to each other because we have been roommates since the year after freshman year of
We're actually
college.
married now. It's really
I
great.
think
by common law, right?
Yeah, we have common law with each other.
We've lived together for
tax reasons.
8
7
years, coming up on 8 years.
Shit, then you got, what is it, 2 to go? Is it 10 years?
I think it's 7.
I think it's 7,
but we
yeah.
haven't been in the same house for 7 or the same state for 7 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think something
counts.
like
That's
that.
like another thing that I've talked to people a lot about is like, we're like best friends. We live in the same house together and we're in a band together. And I think that it's really funny because I'll talk to people about like how they moved in with their friends and they were like, it was a nightmare situation.
Yeah.
Like I thought we were cool. And then like I moved in with them and it was awful.
Yeah, seriously. I feel like everyone has to go through one of those. I feel like it's just like we've only really known each other as living together because it was like, what, a month and we were like talking about it. And even during that month, I was pretty much crashing in your guys' dorm room anyways.
Yeah, we moved his bed into our dorm for a couple nights.
We did a bed. We just had them all right there. But just a very small room. But yeah, I think we just got good at it really early, you know?
Yeah.
But now it's great because, you know, if, Josh needs me to record some guitars, he just comes like, hey, can you come record some guitars? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Or like, it's super fluid.
Well, of course, it can be super fluid when you can just go right down to the other end of the hall, go to the other door, knock on the door, and be like, okay, I want to record this. Let's go and do this. Makes it a lot easier. But by living together, too, and by doing it so early, especially in your band's life cycle, you got to the point in time where you're living in each other's heads, like you said. You got used to each other's like little tendencies early on, and you didn't let the expectations of what living together might be like get into your head. Because I've gone through that too, living with people throughout the course of my, history of like after high school. My roommate, my freshman year, good dude, we got along just fine. Roommate my sophomore year, absolute freaking nightmare. So I'm like, I've gone through that. Lived with my best friend for a year and it worked. And then after that, it was like, you know what? I'm on my own because, well, I kind of just do this now. So it's like, we're just going to be on our own and not have anybody disturb me during this process. So learning to deal with that and learning to figure out what's going to work best for you guys. You literally did that right from the jump. And there's a lot of other younger artists out there that eventually you're going to get to a point where you're working with people and you're going to end up all living together at the beginning because it's going to be the most impactful time for the growing collaboration that is going to be your band. But you also have to take into account what the other people's tendencies are, because again, it's a collaborative effort, not only in music, but if you're going to live together, the living situation, living lifestyle, it's all going to come into play. So essentially you're becoming married to each other, which is why common law might actually fit for this.
For tax reasons, that'd be great. Also, it's like if you're going on tour, you're living together in like a car, you know? I feel like you got to have that the base before you can move into
good practice.
It's great practice so that we can tolerate each other in a car for days. Weeks, months.
I'll say days and weeks now, maybe months, in a couple of months, couple of years, who knows? You guys could be going on a whole nationwide tour that's going to span 3 months time and be stuck in a van with each other.
Exactly.
But living together for, however many years you live together, we say 7 or 8, shoot, you guys got this down path. It's just, you got to deal with each other in a smaller space.
Josh already knows I like to blow on my food,
Yeah.
Every bite, even if it's cold.
You should see this.
It's so weird.
It's crazy.
Let's not get into this. All right?
It takes about 45 minutes for him to get through a burger. It's crazy.
Anyways,
let's move on.
I'll say, if he ever actually gets married and not one of you guys in the band, but to a significant other, if one of you are the best man, definitely put that in the wedding speech.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
100%.
I'll say, the reason I have to say that is because the day we're recording this, 2 days later, my brother's getting married, and that's literally what I was working on right before we got on this call, was the speech for his stuff. So I'm like, what am I pulling out? What kind of crazy little quirky things I have to pull out?
That terrifies me. How were you doing with that?
It took me 2 hours to get it done, and I mean, I've been thinking about it for 8 months now and how I wanted to put it together, but actually writing it out, it's okay, I want to put this section here, I got to put this here, got to get my heartfelt moment here. Okay, how does this all come together so it's not just a hodgepodge mess of, already I'm trying to put a joke in here and now the joke doesn't land because I didn't word it right.
Tucker literally just did that.
I just did that. My brother got married a couple months ago, and I think I stressed about the speech for 6 months. I was like, what do you how do you make it different and not cookie cutter from the rest of it? Also because all of my family knows me as a songwriter and writer, so they're it's gonna be really good.
The bar is so high.
They're because he's sentimental, he's got the emotion, he's good with words, and as soon as I started writing it, I was like, I should have made the whole thing rhyme. That would have been sick. Rhyme. I should have rapped it.
You take out a boombox.
That's crazy. Start playing a beat. I go, all right, guys, buckle in. Meanwhile, my brother and my dad just freestyled theirs.
Yeah.
My dad's was great. My brother's was right on brand.
Yeah.
It was so funny. But I remember there was so much stress trying to get it ready. It's funny.
I had a little bit of stress getting ready because I had a similar kind of expectation so far, because I've been doing this for almost 6 years. So when it comes to public speaking, presenting, and being impactful, my family's like, yeah, you're going to kill it. You're going to do good. And I'm sitting here thinking, how the hell am I supposed to do this with not actually winging it? I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do. So I'm just trying to figure it out. And I was actually driving to a show in Chicago, going to see Caskets play live. And I was listening to Caskets on the way there. I'm like, I got my idea, and I'm formulating this idea in my head, and I let it literally marinate for 2.5 months before I actually wrote anything down. And I wrote down the last possible moment.
Gotta make sure it's good.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I mean, I've got some pretty good, random roast material in there, but I gotta always end it sentimental because my whole goal is not to make my family cry. I want to make my brother actually cry during this, but good tears, not I destroyed your life tears.
To roast him so hard at his wedding that he cries.
The problem is I actually could do it. I have way too much to be able to pull out of there, but I'm I really don't want to use this. A lot of these are the press the button, things go bad, roasts.
Yeah.
The jugular.
Yeah, so we don't have to go near that, but I kind of see where you're coming from too, where the expectations are it's going to be good, from a songwriter's perspective. And it also has to come into play where they're expecting that because they've heard your music, they've heard what you're able to do. They know how impactful it can be, not only to you guys, but to them and to other people. So yeah, their expectations are high because you've set the expectations rightfully so through the music you've created.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Boy.
Yeah, so pump it back into the music and pump it up like, woohoo! But when it comes to the style of the music you guys have created with The Lucky, because I said it definitely has like an alternative style, also has a little bit of like an alternative pop punk style to it at the same time. When it came to the inspiration for the sound you've created with The Lucky, how did you come up with this, especially when it comes to the new EP, Wait It Out?
A little bit of trial and error, for sure.
Yeah, it was kind of odd because like the first EP was like pretty, like it had a lot of pop punk influences.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And then this one, like I think it was honestly working with Michael that gave it that like almost hip hop-esque like production style. Mm-hmm. And our friend Michael Danaeff co-produced it with Josh. And I think his style just like
brought some cool stuff.
Yeah, because like when we were writing it, he would just put things in that like we ended up keeping.
Because we're always gonna bring like, you know, guitars and obviously Tucker's voice. But like when
I'm hoping on the next one we get rid of Tucker.
God, right. Someone else can sing the next album.
Yeah. But when we mix it with Michael, just like adding what we are always leaning towards and what he is leaning towards is a cool little collaboration there. I like that.
It definitely did come forward a little bit interesting too, especially on a song like I gotta pick the right song, Temporary, because I was listening to that. I've gone through the whole EP. I always put a bunch of notes on another screen, so if you see my head turn, like he's not looking at us when he's speaking, yeah, because I'm just trying to remember what I actually wrote about it. Because when it comes to Temporary, it does have a little bit of that different flair to it. I didn't necessarily think it had like a hip hop flair. I thought it had more of like an R&B type flair.
That one we did not do with Michael Danaeff. We did Wait It Out and Never Loved You were the two we did with him.
And Loser.
And Loser we did with him.
Yeah.
Temporary was us.
Temporary was us, and we had brought another writer in.
Yeah.
And I remember we left that session, and I was just like, I don't know if I really like this song. And then I rewrote like half of it, and then we recorded it.
Yeah.
And Mason put a guitar solo on it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? It's kind of cool now.
Yeah.
That was an easier process than a lot of songs.
I don't want to say it's a throwaway because I feel like that doesn't give it like the value it deserves. But in my head, it was like, it was easy. So like I don't think about it as much. Whereas like, I think there are songs that took a lot longer. Like Shadowboxing was such a process because like, it's a weird song. It doesn't really have like a strict form that like is normal for like pop songs or pop punk songs or like anything that's like in pop music. Mm-hmm. So like we sat there and just like had to work with that one for so long to figure out what it was going to be.
Same with Reasons too.
Reasons we've been sitting on for years. Yeah.
Sitting on it for years, shit. But I kind of get where you're coming from too, specifically, Tucker, when you're talking about how a certain song like, which one was it? I already had in my head and I lost. Temporary. How that one, just because it just kind of flowed naturally and came easy, how it feels like a throwaway just because, especially when we think about music, we think about the creative process and trying to make something that's really going to stand out. You think about how artists just scrutinize over every little detail of it over and over again, whether it's just from the initial writing process, demoing it, recording it, mixing, master, adding any production to it as well. There's so many intricate details that artists and musicians go through to make sure it stands out the way they want it to, where that meticulous process can just really feel like you have something great in your hands. But if it goes through quickly, it can also feel like, you know what, maybe this isn't just the one that hit because it just felt like it went too quick. But at that point in time, maybe you guys were so connected to the idea that you wanted to work on and how it came out naturally. Every aspect and every choice you were making to amplify this song was the right one. So it just happened compared to Shadowboxer. Maybe you had to be a lot more focused in and meticulous on it, where it feels like, hey, we put a lot of work into this one, but it came out the way it did. Maybe because you were searching for an idea and you weren't hearing it. And as time went on, as you were building up through the process, you found it, but it took a long time to get there. Whether it takes a long time or a short time to get there, it doesn't matter as long as you get there the way that you want to get there. And the song, the way you want it to be and the way you want it to sound is what ends up being the final product.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We even have this other song that we wrote it originally And then we were like, you know what? Like, our style's changed. We need to make it fit more of the style because it's like we've moved past it. So we rewrote it in this whole new style. And then we were just like, maybe it's just not that good. And then we just scrapped it.
Sometimes that happens.
You go through all this process and you're trying to make it work and you realize maybe we don't need to make it work.
And then there's songs that you listen to and you're like, wow, that shit is so good from the start. From the start, it's so exciting.
Well, we've heard stories about other like artists who've like gone in and done one take on something. It's like, that's it. We know we hit it. Artists that meticulously go over songs for 3 or 4 months just to get it right. And that's the beauty of music and the beauty of art. There is no set limitation on how long things have to be, how short things have to be, how the process has to go. That's the unique thing about art. It's all up to your interpretation. And you as the creators of this, it's up to how you want to go about this, how you want to do this. As long as you don't put yourself in a box and have any parameters on it, the world is your oyster. The musical world is your oyster to be able to change these things up, to be able to freely maybe work in a different style if you want to, especially on a one song. And if it doesn't work out and you're like, this song may have not been good at all, even from the get-go, you know what? The creative process led you to that decision because you went through it and you discovered it. You didn't just try it once and say, okay, we're going to do this one time. And that's all we're going to do on it. And then that's that. Because you could put something out there. It's like, it was okay. It could use a lot more work in this aspect. And a couple of like months down the line after its release, you could be kicking yourself because you didn't try it out. But hey, that's the beauty of art. That's the beauty of music. It's kind of trial and error at that same point, but that's the openness that can create the greatness.
I mean, even now, I feel like you look back at all the songs that you wrote in the past, and you're just like, dang, like I should have.
I think
we could have done so much better now, you know?
Like, one of our biggest songs is Handmade House. I did some lyric where there's something about the word boyfriend in a song that just like really turns me off. And
it's
like
really cringe. It's high level
100%. And I put that in a song like, when I was like 18 or 19, and now it's just in history forever. Yeah. And I have to live with it,
Yeah, it's kind of weird when you look back. It's like, I would not say that now. I would not even think about that now. Oh, God, why did I do that? But that's the beauty of music, too, where I can't remember who said the quote, but it was, art decorates space, but music decorates time. And because you wrote that during when you were 18 or 19, you used that word because that's how you were thinking, that's what you were feeling, that's what you thought was be the most impactful at that point in time. So when you listen back to it, it might seem cringe now, especially as you go through life and you think about where you are, it's like, man, I really wish I didn't say that. But at the time, that's what it is, and it's a timestamp of you at that point in time in life. And many of us that listen to it might be able to go back to even that point in time in our lives, think about it and be like, I'm relating to it in that way. Might not hit me now, but if I think about it when I was 18 or 19, it absolutely hits on a completely different level for the betterment of the song and also the betterment of how we are taking it as humans.
We were all cringy 18-year-olds, man.
Hey, man. When you're like 18, 19, I look back at it, I'm like, wow, I cannot believe who I was back then. Like, I've just changed so much. It's honestly insane, because in my head back then, I was like, I'm grown.
I'm grown
up. And then, like, 4 years later, I'm looking back, and I'm like, oh, God. And then 4 years after that, I'm like, oh, God, who am I at 21?
Tucker changed so much that we had to, like, get a bunch of new photo shoots because the photos that we had didn't look like him at all.
Like, you guys aged well,
and
you guys, I aged well in the sense that like I don't look as cringy, I guess, but like you guys look similar still, which is like nice. We had to fully get pictures taken because people would be like, they have a new singer.
Yeah. You put on 60 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, I put on 40 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, 80 pounds of muscle.
I put on 120 pounds of raw muscle.
600 pounds of muscle. And
cut all my hair off.
Added, most tattoos since then.
And now I'm covered in tattoos.
It's like, did you guys go from some scrawny kid as vocalist to an absolute golem juggernaut looking dude? It's like,
it was the 9 Inch Nails thing. It was what was his name from 9 Inch Nails?
Which one? Trent Reznor?
Trent Reznor. He used to be super skinny, and then he got all jacked. And everyone was like, is that the same guy?
It's like he just went to the gym, got angry, and just started lifting a lot of heavy shit. And now that's where the music's going to go.
That's what's gonna happen.
Hey man, sometimes you need it. And you know what's funny is I feel like the next music is so like lighthearted and fun.
It's and so you got it all out of the gym.
I got it all out at the gym, so now the music's all fun.
But once again, art decorates space, music decorates time. When you're working on this music, you're always going to be looking at what you're feeling at that moment, how life is hitting you at that moment. So when we listen to songs and we listen to them, that still have that timeless feel, they connect with us when we first hear them. They connect with us later on in life. That's the beauty of it. And when you guys are working on stuff now, it's going to hit you in this exact moment, how you're feeling, where life is, whether you're, feeling great about living together, potentially being married under common laws. I've said that for like the third or fourth time. Or as life progresses, maybe you guys end up finding significant others, going and living with them, but still sticking close. Hey, that could still work too. You never know. But as time goes on, as responsibilities changes, your mindset changes, those differences are going to come through in your music. But that's, again, where we get some of these more incredible stories. We get some more of these profound moments, because then you could write a song about reflecting on one of your biggest hits, going back to 1819, even write a song about how you didn't wish you didn't say the word boyfriend in the song, but hey, that's where I'm at right now. So
yeah. I think that like my goal in terms of like writing music too, saying like art decorates time, I feel like what I want for future music is to sound less in a time period and sound more like timeless. Just because like I feel like live instruments will always be timeless. I feel like like live sounding music will always feel timeless, and like I think that's kind of what we want to like get towards.
Society has gone through some production phases.
Yeah, and I think we also get influenced by those phases, and I'm not saying that like our future music won't still be influenced by that, but I feel like I feel like there's a world where we start getting more timeless and less like in a time period.
Like we phased out the dubstep wubs,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think that's great.
Some haven't.
But like in pop music, it's less common.
Yeah.
Well, in pop music, it's less common due to the fact of how they have always stuck with trends, and especially on the production side of things. So take a look at pop music in the 50s. It definitely had a more bare bones feel to it, because that's just when electric instruments really became more mainstream. In the 60s, as that evolved, 60s has more of that timeless feel to it, where you can still listen to it today. Even though it's from the 60s, it still can connect it because of how prevalent the live instruments were. Think about the 70s. What was the big thing in the 70s? Disco. The different types of electronic instruments they used there had such a unique sound to it, and the unique flow to it, that if you hear a song that has something similar in there, you're automatically thinking the 70s. Synthwave in the 80s and all the electronic synths that they use, immediately you hit on that. The new metal stuff from the 90s and early 2000s, absolutely stick with it. Dubstep with the wubs in there still absolutely makes you feel like you're in 2010, 2011. But again, it's the beauty of it, where you can put those in your music and evoke those memories. But the more you still kind of focus in on more of the timelessness of certain aspects of music, where an electric guitar is an electric guitar. It's across so many different eras, so many different styles of music, so many different time periods, that it's always going to be able to be mixed with so many other things. Drum, bass, vocals, mixed with so many things. When it comes to production, though, it's as time has gone on and production's been able to maybe get a little bit cleaner, you're able to mix certain more of these modern tendencies with some more classical elements from production, like maybe take a modern twist on disco, modern twist on synthwave, modern twist on some of the crazy ideas of like the hip hop and new metal we're doing in the 90s and 2000s, and put them into your music, so it still has a callback to that era, but still has that timeless feel, because you're crossing multiple different things at the same time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that was one of our like major realizations, was like at least early on, that we could kind of mold so many genres, and it's a fine thing to do. I think really early on we were kind of set on this like, if we write this song, like it has to be, have this certain brand or this certain like sound to it. And these days we kind of just write whatever the hell we want.
Yeah, we wrote a 6-minute ballad like most recently, and it's still one of my favorite things that we've written. Like that's the kind of stuff that we're on now, where it's like, why be so like boxed into like one genre. If Beyonce can write a country album, so can we. You know what I mean? Like who cares?
Yeah.
Music is music. Like you shouldn't have to do one genre. I think that is like gonna keep so many people from creating incredible art.
Yeah. And I also think like because it is us, we look at it and we're like, wow, these songs are so different. But somebody's gonna come in and look at it and be like, yeah, that sounds like The Lucky.
Yeah, it sounds like Tucker singing and like, you know,
guitars and production, and it's all in the same world.
Ends up in the same world.
It does all up in the same world, and I was looking at, you know, I brought up Temporary, and I thought that there were some instances of R&B that were happening in there from an influential standpoint. Even listening to Reasons, I'm starting to see some pieces that I could relate to 30 Seconds to Mars in that song as well. Going to Loser, I'm picking up things that I could hear in Ginger, and also Ed Sheeran at the same time. But it still had that.
The funny thing about Loser is like it's this like rock hip hop song, and then the bridge is just like Justin Timberlake.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
It's weird, but it really works in a very interesting way because you're taking different ideas and you're just working with them and seeing what happens. And that's where I think a lot of the music that's being made right now, especially with certain bands that are really growing and really hitting the mark, are going to end up staying as timeless bands or being those era-defining bands because so many artists are not allowing that, you know, genre restriction to impact them. I think about Bring Me the Horizon, think about what Bad Omens has done the past couple of years. So think about what Sleep Token did. They're just going out there and doing something different, and they're able to pick in so many different genres of where they're going from. But it's that sort of fluidity that not only allows the artist to continue to try and create, but inspires them to try things they never thought were possible. And that's where we're getting more music, especially from bands that are coming up and really starting to grow right now, like you guys, to try these things, put them out there, and we're seeing how impactful this can be as an idea and to foster your own creative wants and urges.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you said 6-minute ballad song, and I'm thinking, I kind of want to hear that now.
Yeah, right. It's funny because like we wrote it all in one night, and I went upstairs and I was like, that might be my favorite song we've written in like a while.
Yeah.
Well, because I felt like that was like one of those songs where you just kind of write it and you're like, man, that just feels good.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's 6 minutes long, which is like the polar opposite of what's common now, especially in pop music. Like you're looking at like the 2.5 minute to 3 minute song.
We put out Reasons at 1 minute.
1 minute and
something.
like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
I clocked it at 127.
127.
Yeah. And like that's so common now.
But that's what that song needed. That song needed that, and this song needs 6 minutes.
This song needs 6 minutes and a ripping guitar solo, like a ballady guitar solo. I've always wanted that, like to do that in a song.
Like, we looked at like if you've ever listened to Paper Kites, they have like those really good like.
Oh my god!
Too Late by the Paper Kites. It's
Yeah,
very good like slow guitar solo that's all just feel, and it's just like it makes you just go like yes.
Yeah, like sit in the music, like not you know. I just want to get through this song.
Yeah, we're not trying to do that.
Like it's just sitting in a feeling. Yeah. God, I love that song so much. I'm ready to like finish.
You know, to be honest, I think a lot of like these sort of ideas are what kind of sparked this band versus the last band.
Yeah.
We were sort of hitting a wall like right during COVID when we were.
You're so right.
This is so true. Yeah, when we were doing Handmade House, we started doing because right around that time we had kind of like our breakout, like you know we started doing well on a song. You know we hit the 1 million mark on Spotify. We like started doing really well, and I think a lot of our thought processes at the time were, you know, how do we make the next song beat that song?
Yeah.
And inevitably as a young band, you start going like, okay, we got to have 2.5 minute songs. Like if we don't hit the chorus before like 30 seconds, like it's a failure. Like that sort of thought process.
It's like mathematical.
Yeah. It started getting like that for every song.
We were like writing to the algorithm.
Yeah. And we were going like, oh, like, I can't even remember at that time, but like something like Dua Lipa's like album came out and it was like disco based, and we're like, we gotta hit it, we gotta do a disco song.
Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah,
we literally like, okay, so our next thing needs to be disco. Like, that should be our thing.
Yeah, and that's how our thought process at the time was. And at a certain point, we realized we're like, what the hell are we doing? You know, like what?
There was a point where I was writing to beats.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
There
were
was a
fully
good 6 months where I was writing to beats.
we were
instead of,
fully a
like,
band that was making like type beats. Like it was crazy. It was actually insane to look back at it, and we sort of just hit a wall, and we were like, you know, what are we doing? What is the direction?
Yeah. And also we had, just for some lore here, we had another member, Amin, amazing guitarist, amazing guy. Because we were, sitting in this for so long.
And it was COVID, to be fair.
It was
It was like
COVID,
2019.
and he just like needed to make some money in music. I think he was losing a little bit of faith, as I think a lot of us were in that, And so he was like, I need to take a step back. I got to go do my own thing. And good for him to do that, because he's doing amazing now. But then we were just looking at this and we were like, it's kind of just been us three all along. We've had a bunch of people come in and out, but I think the core of it was us three. So we were like, we just got to make the new thing.
A lot of that was just taking a step back and like reevaluating. In that prior year to doing that, we had gone through so many different like pivots on like trying to make this thing work. And at that point, we just had to take that step back and be like, what is this band that we've been in for the last, 5-6 years? And how do we reposition ourselves to be artistically
true to
ourselves? And that's kind of what the Lucky turned into.
Yeah. And I think, like, with the three of us, realistically, like, there's not a world where we're writing to beats anymore.
Yeah.
Like, that would never happen with the three of us. And I think that's why, like, it started to get really hard with Handmade House, and, like, we had lost some of that identity, is because it's like, I'm getting pitched, like, 3 beats a week to be like, which one do you want to write on? And it's like, I don't know. Like,
I mean, some people can do that. It's not stifling in any way, because it's one voice that is writing to that beat, but the way that this band works is we're in a room and we're talking to each other the whole way through.
Yeah. And even if it's like a thing where like we get like a track down, like usually all of us are in the room for the track, and I'll get like a chorus and I'll be like, I'm going to write the verses like this week.
Yeah. You're like, I have this main idea for the chorus, and we're like, all right, we're going to take that.
Yeah.
We're going to get a scratch vocal real quick, and we're going to go crazy with the track.
Yeah. But like me trying to just write to beats, like even the times I did do that, like, I don't know if we really used a single one. Like even Reasons was still Josh and I in this room. And I walked into him just playing with synths, and I was like, this is sick. I just wrote something to it.
Yeah.
And like, that was it. But it like, I don't think there was a single time where I received one of those beats and was like, this is our song
what
now.
I need.
Because at that point, it's not the Lucky, it's Tucker writing on a beat.
Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't sound, and also like it just wasn't as collaborative. Like it was like it was just it was weird time. But I think that is a great point, Josh. Like I think that is what made us switch so much.
Yeah.
Not only is that a great point, but it's also a great example for so many other artists that are at your level, that are just starting out, or that are even bigger than you guys, to really take stock and to really understand. Because when you guys had that first hit with Handmade House, now you're thinking about how do we top this, and you're focusing in on so many of the analytics side of things. You're not just marketing to the algorithm or marketing to the way that music is being delivered to people. You are creating music specifically with that in mind. So you're putting your own creativity in a box, and you're not actually letting your stuff shine. You're not letting yourself creatively shine. And as fans, we want to find that. We want to see, like you said, if Beyonce can write a country album, you guys can do whatever you want. If Dua Lipa can do something that has more disco to it, you can do whatever you want. If, think about Falling in Reverse, if Ronnie Radke can make any wacky song with any wacky genre and it's going to work, you guys have the ability to do whatever you want. Yes, I know and understand that social media, Spotify, streaming, and how music is being delivered, especially through these algorithms and how people are consuming it, is something that needs to be taken into account. But that's marketing your music and marketing yourself to it, not creating for it. And by figuring that out and learning that, you guys are able to take a step back, realize where, the project wasn't going and where it was going wrong at that point in time from a idealistic and creative standpoint, corrected it, and now you're in a much better place overall, creating music that you absolutely love. And being able to go through an experience like that especially as we were leading into COVID and having a whole entire, stopgap to the music industry, and seeing how that was the only way to get your music to people during that time was, hey, you got to promote it through social media. You got to promote it on Spotify. You got to get on these playlists, and you got to make sure that you're following these trends. Bands that just follow trends are always way, 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 way behind. They're always behind because that trend's going to pass by the time you actually create a song, get it mixed, mastered, and ready to go. So by figuring out that you guys are just going to be better off doing the things that you want to do and not be stifled creatively because you're trying to please an algorithm, or you're trying to always one up the overall mathematical stats of a song that you just wrote, you're going to be in a much better place. And it's proving to be that true right now.
Yeah. 100%.
Yep.
And if it wasn't, then you guys wouldn't be here. You guys would be just still trying to write to a beat.
Yep. Exactly.
That is true.
Exactly.
That's where we
and I'm not trying to put you down too for trying to write to a beat, because maybe you're trying that one time and it might be a creative idea that you're looking towards. But again, if you're focusing on like the new core of the music because that's just where you think it's gonna be the best for the statistical standpoint, then you're losing out on what makes you guys special. You refound it. That is the important thing. You rediscover what made you guys the musicians you are, and you rediscover the specialists. That is the lucky.
Yeah, I think that like Spotify numbers and like playlists and stuff can really get in your head and just affect like creativity in general. Because I think it would be crazy to say that an artist doesn't get affected by that, especially like a small one, like growing, like independent artists looking at that. You get your first like song that does decent, and you're like, okay, cool, do it again.
Yeah. And I think it's also in our case specifically tough because we're almost comparing ourselves to ourselves, because our last project, had these big Spotify numbers, and then our new project, which we're much more excited about, isn't getting those numbers. So now it's like, is it because that was better, or is that just the time, or is like, what is, So you have to like dispel that in your head so that,
Yeah, the song still does well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's paying for some stuff, which is
nice. Yeah, I mean, realistically, you just have to sit down and be like, okay, what do I like?
Yeah.
If I like something, then
hopefully other people
will like it. Inevitably, you just have to find those people. And doing something for numbers, it will never amount to anything.
Yeah.
Realistically.
Well, it's kind of the same thing with, doing these podcasts, doing these interviews, where I look at the stats and it's like there's certain things I have to take into account. But from a creative standpoint, I can look and see what parts of the podcast do better, what parts are people more interested in. But if I just stuck to those and just like, okay, I'm just going to have to stick to asking this question, doing this, then they become way too structured, and I don't enjoy doing this anymore. And then that passion goes away and the overall quality ends up dipping. Where if I continue to have free-form conversations and we get on a topic just like this out of nowhere, from talking about your music and the creative process behind it, not only do I get more excited about you guys, I get more excited about this, and that excitement can transcend and go further and actually become the identity that this podcast has had for almost 6 years. And if I completely change that up just to please the algorithm or please the mathematical stats, I lose that identity that is myself, the identity that I have with this, and it changes to something that is much more formulaic, much more standardized, and much more uninspired.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's crazy the parallels that you can see from, and that could go to like an artist, like a painter. You create something, you paint something in a style, and people absolutely love it. What if you don't want to paint in that style again? What if you just wanted to try it out, but now you feel like you have to be put into a box to paint in that style? It stifles the creativity. You guys were able to actually experience that and fully be able to step out of it. So if you ever get to a point again where a song from The Lucky just pops off in the next 6 months or a year, like if that 6-minute ballad just pops off out of nowhere, it's like, all right, now I'll just keep creating 6-minute ballads. Whoa. We went through this beforehand. Let's just not even worry about that, and let's just keep making the music we want to make. And if something happens, something happens. If we want to go down that road again, we go down that road again. But if we don't want to, we don't try and force the issue.
I think another great thing, too, is that we're so far ahead in the writing process now that even if, let's say Wait It Out blows up, we've already written all the new stuff, so we can't be influenced by it.
It's already been done.
It's already done in the true sense of like what we wanted at that time. We've already created that.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of me not even have to ask anymore. Well, what comes next for the Lucky? Because you guys have been writing so much more new music where if something does pop off, we don't really know what to expect next. We know stuff's coming, but we know it's not going to be formulaic, and we know it's not going to be so standardized where we're going to expect the same thing over and over and over again. It's not like a pop music industry plant type style where it's just, this is what's popular, this is what they're going for. Nope. It's a creative band. It's 3 guys creating whatever music they want to create, so you never know what to expect next. All you know what to expect next is, from a music standpoint, there might be a 6-minute ballad that pops in there.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know.
I think the next 4 songs is going to be so strange, like after what we just released, that like people are going to be like, what direction is this? But again, it all ties in. Like it all makes sense.
Yeah. To us, at least.
To us. And honestly, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And if it didn't work and it didn't make sense, it didn't all tie in, and it's like, well, can people be successful like that? Well, take a look at all the bands that are really doing well right now, especially in the rock and metal space. The ones that are blowing up are doing stuff like that. Bring Me the Horizon, I say, is the poster child of it. And I think it was the day or two before we recorded this, they just played their largest show ever in Brazil for 46,000 people. So
cool.
Their last album was fantastic.
Crazy,
yeah, it was really cool.
Fantastic.
You were playing that. I woke up.
I sat here and I listened to the entire thing, like
studio,
really loud.
And I like got out of bed and I was like, I must go listen to this.
Yeah,
like this is sounding cool.
They did some crazy, like one, it's a concept album, so they did that QR code thing. Did you hear about that? It was so basically you're able to, through a spectrogram, like the graph. Yeah. They basically put a QR code through a spectrogram and then played the sound on the record. So it actually sounds like, because it's the whole frequencies field, it sounds like, but it's like the QR code. And then if you throw that through a spectrogram and then, take a picture of it, it brings you to like a web page that like goes through the whole concept of the album, and it has like stems and all these like other things. Really cool. Really interesting. Yeah, they're a fantastic band. They're really like pushing the envelope as far as like, I don't know, like what a metal or post-hardcore band can do.
Or what an artist can be, because I mean they started out as a deathcore band.
Yeah, insane.
Yeah. And because even I was listening to it too, I'm like, you know what? Especially with Posthuman Next Gen, I enjoyed parts of it, but it really wasn't the thing that I was fully like getting into. Where when they released Posthuman Survival Horror in 2020, I was like, holy fucking shit! Yeah. So that's the beauty of it, where you guys can make music in any way you want. And there could be times where, especially like as a listener myself, I could listen to it and think it's absolutely insane, absolutely incredible. And there's other music I could listen to and be like, I'm just really not that into it. But at the same point in time, you guys are making all this great music. You're making it the way you want to make it. And it just gives so many people a chance to get into you guys. At the same time, it feeds your soul. It feeds who you are as people. It feeds who you are as musicians. And then when even there's songs out there that us as fans, we like, we don't like, we're not as big of fans of, the ones that we're kind of like, just really not for me, we still can see the beauty and the love that's in there and the joy that's in there, or the sadness or whatever you're putting in there, because we know the core sound is there from the Lucky. We know you guys know what you're doing. You're putting your full soul into it, and we connect with it that way.
Yeah. Exactly.
And now I got to ask this question. So we already know that there's no more new music in the works. There's more new music that's come out in 2025. What else you guys got going on in 2025 that we can expect from the Lucky?
We would love to play live music. I think that's our... Okay, so I can maybe speaking for just myself here, but my favorite thing about this whole project is live shows. We do all this work behind the scenes, we write all the songs, and the reward is playing a live show. And so I think we've done a lot of groundwork, and I think this next year for us is just get your ass out there and play some shows.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's what we started as with Handmade House too. I think that it was so based on live performances, and like that's kind of where we thrive, that like, not getting to do that as much in the last couple of years has been pretty hard. Yeah. And so I think that's kind of the goal for next year, is just be playing live a lot more.
Whenever we can,
yeah.
Play live wherever you can. Maybe follow around the WWE John Cena retirement tour and just play a live show in all those cities.
Play in the parking lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, silly goose the hell out of this thing.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, dude, they've been crazy.
Oh yeah, I've never had a chance to actually see him though. Like the one time I could have seen him was at Louder Than Life in 2023, but they were playing the exact same time as Baby Metal, and I'm like, I got a choice I got to make, and I'd not seen Baby Metal to that point. I'm like, I'm going to see 3 Japanese girls go absolutely nuts on stage right now. So see everybody. And then this year for Louder Than Life, they were supposed to play on Friday when the remnants of that hurricane hit, so I completely missed out on it. But January 2025, they're going to be here in Milwaukee, and it's like, I can't miss out on that. And it's not even out of a van either. They're playing an actual venue.
That's great.
Fun.
That's great.
I feel like I'm getting a little cheated, though. I'm like, can you guys just put the venue in the building and then just play out of the, like, have it parked on stage and play off of that?
Yeah,
exactly.
I honestly, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Holy shit, I should actually, we should just send a message and be like, hey, your stage set should just be looking like you guys are playing out of the van again.
It should be a U-Haul.
Nice.
Should just be a U-Haul, drum kits in the back of the U-Haul, put it on stage.
Put it on stage, have the guitarist or one of the guitarists stand on top of the U-Haul, someone on the side, have the vocalist just running around, in the pit with us having a blast.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to send this clip to him and be like, we're endorsing this.
Live shows is the goal. Is there anything else in the works?
A lot of new music.
A lot of new music.
A lot of new music? Well, we're looking forward to it. But gentlemen, I have one more question I want to ask you before I wrap this up. It is something I enjoy asking every single artist I have in the podcast, not only for us as fans of music to get to know more great music that's out there, but for you to help get more people in the music that you guys love. So I always ask for 3, and there are 3 of you here, so I want 1 from each of you. So as a group, can you guys give me 3 bands or artists that you love that you would love to see more people get into right now?
Ooh, get more people into?
That's a good question.
We going like a deep cut we want more people to know about? Is that the goal? Or are we just going to our favorite bands that everyone should know?
Like if you've got a band that, you're closely tied to that you want to see more people get into and give them a shout out, give them recognition, go for it. So it's always like, if you're a band that's like your size, maybe a little bit bigger or smaller, whatever it might be, just bands that you want to see more people get into. Or artists. It could be and it could be any genre, any style, doesn't matter. Synchronized.
I feel like I've been listening to such different stuff than what we've been writing.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I always am.
Yeah.
Well, actually, mine's still semi in the same world.
Yeah.
But
what's yours? You go first.
You go first.
I listen to a lot of, like, Medium Build and Morrow.
Yeah.
Morrow's fantastic. What's that album?
Morrow is big, though. I mean, Morrow is
big.
big, and Medium Build is, like, has become big over the last, like, 2 years.
Yeah.
Do you know Medium Build?
No.
Okay, so at least there you go. So I'm getting someone on it then.
There we go.
Yeah, Medium Build has like 750,000 monthly listeners.
Yeah.
I found him like a while ago on. This is the power of TikTok. I will say this is like one of the few artists that I've found where I was like, oh my god, and he had like 3,000 followers on TikTok at the time, and like I think like 20,000 monthly listeners, and he put out this song called "Come On Back" that like started popping off, and like bigger musicians were sharing it, and I had like showed people, I was like, this dude sings with passion like I've never seen before.
Yeah, seriously.
And then now I'm just like hooked. Like he's one of my favorite artists now.
He had this one video on TikTok he did where he was like ice skating at
like
an outdoor rink and playing the acoustic guitar and singing while he's ice skating.
And it's live.
I'm in.
It's live. It's just, it doesn't feel like he's like, this is going to sound like an insult, but I actually mean this as like a compliment. It doesn't sound like he's trying to sound really good. Like he's just singing with so much soul and heart that like, you're like, I believe him.
He's got conviction.
Yeah. You're like,
that's a great way to put it.
So I think that he's really become one of my favorite. Yeah, him, the Paper Kites, and Morrow I'm gonna say Medium Build is my my artist.
That's yours. I'm gonna go. I've been listening to this guy for like a year now, and I've slowly fell in love with him. His name is Ken Yates. It's like acoustic singer-songwriter stuff.
It's so different than our music.
It's so different, but
this is so funny.
It's just like, I mean, that's where I think we're such fans of like really good songwriting.
Yeah.
And this is just where you find just really good songwriting. But I think he has really good harmony and melodies, and like every time I listen to a song of his, I'm like,
yeah,
shit, I wish I thought of that. That was really good. But just a master class on songwriting as a whole? Ken Yates, that's mine. Joshua.
I'll say this just because it's my guilty pleasure right now, and it's not as profound as the other boys. But I've been really, and you probably know these artists, but Bill Murray has been my like go-to guilty pleasure for like the last 2 months.
They're fun.
It really gives me like that like a band like Issues.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me that like I don't know, like kind of half post-hardcore, half mixing it with another genre thing that I think that a lot of bands...
Just tickles your ear.
Yeah, it tickles my ear. Sounds really good.
Yeah.
Like mix
Really
on it
well
is
done.
just...
Really well done.
I love just incorporating horns and like...
Yeah, just weird.
Yeah.
Like right now, their last album was like all like country oriented. It's like country mixed with post-hardcore, mixed with pop punk, mixed with... Yeah, I just love bands that are actually pushing the genres forward because like a lot of times in those types of genres it's just like formulaic.
100%.
Yeah, and I've been really into their last album for a little bit now.
Well, I know Bill Murray's got a tour coming up at the beginning of 2025, and it was the venue that they're playing closest to me. It sold out like in a half hour.
Wow, yeah.
They have a huge cult following right now, which is great.
And that cult following just keeps growing and growing. But just the suggestions you guys gave on this, are the music different from your guys? Well, especially when it comes to Bill Murray, I can say yes. When it comes to the other ones that you guys brought up, or is it different? I'm going off what you're saying and thinking yes as well. But that's the beauty about me asking this question, because there are artists I found that I've never even heard of. Hell, there was like a Hungarian folk band that someone brought up once. I'm like, why the? Okay, I'll go check it out. Why not? And it was pretty damn good.
Yeah, I think medium build is probably the closest, and I do think that like no matter what, I think whatever I'm listening to will always get really put into the music because it's like that's what I'm inspired by at the time. So like you're getting melodies and lyrics that are going to be like how I'm feeling, like no matter what the track is, like you're going to get that. So I think that's why. And then like because I'm bringing that in, like it's going to be like this is the vibe I want.
Also, his arrangement and instrumentation is just generally closer.
Yeah, it's like real instruments, and because we're going for like a really live, timeless feel for like everything in the future, I feel like that's kind of why it is closest to that. But I think it's a little more upbeat than his music.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like his music tends to be on the slower side.
New album, he had one upbeat one that I heard so far was great.
There's some just like
he just put out an album
worth going and listening to like so much of his music, honestly. Like just also I had the pleasure of meeting him in person, and just such a kind person that I was like, damn, like this is the best. This is the best. Like I love meeting an artist and being like, okay, so you're just a really chill dude.
Yeah.
You're just a really chill guy.
It's like, you're a good person. I actually like this, and I know you're not a person that's going to cause everyone to leave and put a post, as of this moment, I'm announcing I'm leaving as LA dying. We're not seeing artists like that. We don't want, we're meeting other people that are like, I want to join that person. I want to believe in that person. I want to follow that person. Let's go.
Yeah, I think that just makes it easy to be like a fan of someone's music. And I'm not one to like
share their music.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's so many people I've met that I think like their music's great, but like you see them on like all over social media and they're just a horrible person, and you're like, that sucks. Yeah. Like that we're like uplifting those people when like there's people like him and probably thousands of other artists that make great music that are also just like kind really and care about people. Yeah.
It's a wacky world we live in. Humans are not perfect. Humans are not perfectly rational people. They're just going to go off of emotion most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it is what it is, and I'm glad you guys at least gave some of those other artists a shout out so we can, promote them, put them in a little bit of like a Instagram reel, TikTok, YouTube short type thing, get more people to know about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I want to thank you guys for taking the time today to join us in the Chord Progression Podcast. I do want to close this out by saying three things. So first things first, when it comes to The Lucky, when it comes to their most recent EP called Wait It Out, you can find it all over streaming. You can find it wherever you want. You can follow along with the band everywhere on social media. and you're not going to want to miss out when they're going to be playing a live show in your area, and I hope it's all of 2025. To be sure you are a part of the Lucky's family and really understanding exactly where you need to go, the description of the podcast has everything for you. Links and labels for social media, where you can stream their music, where you can find them, where you can connect with them, where you can go see a live show, and if they got merch online, I'm finding it. We're going to put it down there for you to go check out as well, so give them some of them dollar bills, y'all. Yes, I just said that. Now step for number 2, gentlemen. Whenever guests on the podcast, I enjoy the podcast, I tend to make a certain promise as a way to say thank you, I appreciate you taking the time, and I wish to continue supporting you in the future. And hopefully this pushes you guys to go out and play some more live shows, because my promise is not an if. It is a when. It is a when I get to see you perform live for the first time, because it will happen. We just don't have a day or time yet. But when I see you perform live for the first time, I will find you. I will come and say hi to you. But the promise really is that first round's on me.
All right.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thank you,
Just hold me to it, because all of a sudden you guys might see me all of a sudden if I'm walking somewhere and it's like I don't recognize it's you guys right away, because I'm like, I must go, I'm talking to someone else, just be like, hey, Kevin. Hey, guys, you owe us that first round. That's right. Just go take care of it.
Awesome, man.
That's great.
Yeah. So now it's time for number 3. I cannot end this episode by saying goodbye. That is way too final. Plus, I made you a promise, and this conversation was a hell of a lot of fun. I would love to have you guys back on the podcast again in the future to not only talk about more new music, but see what else we get into, because you never know. Always good stuff, though.
Absolutely.
We'll get into some exciting stuff and have some more stuff for you to talk about here next year or something.
Next year, later this year, even though we're recording this in December, it's like, who knows, the next 20-some days, something could pop off. Then it's like, oh, God, we got to do this again, and we got to redo this. Let's roll with it. But, guys, this cannot be goodbye. That's way too final. This is, I'll see you later.
See you later.
Well, folks, that was my interview with Tucker Mason and Josh from the band The Lucky. Now it's time for Kevin's final thought. This is the episode that not only does every artist need to listen to, but every aspiring artist and any creative needs to listen to. So let's go back and let's talk about why. So we not only went into The Lucky when there were Handmade House, and when they had that initial hit, that's actually still paying some of the bills today, but why they all of a sudden were following along with the stats of it and focused so heavily on it, it ended up costing the creative process. When you end up taking a creative thing and you end up boiling it down to metrics, boiling it down to statistics, numbers, it is no longer a creative thing anymore. It is now what businesses do to drive success in a business world. But we're talking about music industry. We're talking about art here. There's not going to be a product of a good art product or a good song, good music, if that passion is not there. So if you're going to constrain yourself to a box of whatever is popular at the time, whatever the length of song is popular at the time, whatever the absolute popular trend is at that time, whatever you think is going to please the overall algorithm. Like we were saying earlier, like I brought up, you kind of want to market to the algorithm. Market the creation of your music to the algorithm. You don't want to create for the algorithm. Again, I say market to it because that's the way that bands are getting noticed through TikTok, social media, Spotify, and that's the metrics that people are looking towards. And those algorithms have a huge amount of power in terms of what gets played and what doesn't get played. I know it sucks to say, but that's just the way it is. But when you create music specifically for it, you're always going to be behind. You're going to put yourself in a box, and it's going to just sound like a hodgepodge mess of whatever was popular at that point in time and not really have any really ground to stand on going forward. You're not going to be fulfilled by it either. I wouldn't be fulfilled by it, especially with this podcast, if I was stuck talking about the same exact things over and over and over again, not letting conversations flow free. Would I maybe have better stats if I just stuck to like a 30-minute format and just talked about like the exact same topics that seem to be popping off? Maybe. Would I enjoy it in a creative aspect? I'd be so bored of this. I'd have quit years ago, but that's what we have. That's why we keep discovering great bands, because we haven't done that. And the Lucky are not doing that either. And you're seeing where the fulfillment is coming from them. And that is going to end up being the groundwork for great art, for them to get not only people to get into the band, but to make this a very, very successful thing in the long term for themselves. So you need to have that product at the core to be successful, especially when it comes to art. And if you're just following along with trends, or you're just trying to like chase the coattails of something, you're never going to make it. But if you find that thing for yourself and you just work off of that and just let creativity flow, That's where the beauty comes in. I want to thank the guys for being on the podcast today. When it comes to Lucky, go script for the podcast where it says find the Lucky online links, labels for everything. You're going to be down there for you to get in the know with them, listen to their music, and check them out live when they're coming to your area. Please be sure to follow along the Chord Progression Podcast. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Links for the podcast below. Hit the subscribe button right down here to subscribe to the Chord Progression Podcast on YouTube. Hit the follow button on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to follow us there if that's what you prefer. Hit the like button on these episodes because, yes, it helps push in the algorithm. I got to play that game too, but we ain't changing the creative process of this. But marketing-wise, maybe. We'll see what happens. On that note, that's going to be for me, everybody. Thank you for watching, listening to the Chord Progression Podcast. My name is Kevin, and you guys know how I end every single one. Of the big, healthy, and hearty. See ya! Yeah.